I used to not understand. I'm like, why would a man not fight for his kid? And then I realized a lot of these guys that are homeless have just been like wrecked in the court system.
She could ring her lawyer up every day for a month, and every single phone call, every single letter goes on his bill. But if she takes him to court and bleeds him dry and leaves him penniless, she then gets the council house. She is incentivized to bankrupt.
And they'll kick the men out of the house with the men's name on the mortgage. So they're still paying their mortgage in a house they're kicked out of. And I'm like, would you fight in court if you had a 10% chance of winning?
You either settle out of court for an extortionate amount of money or go to court and pay double that. Meanwhile, there is no risk on the woman's side at all. It's the most sexist thing I've ever seen in my life.
Like, the kid really isn't yours. It's really hers legally.
And I understand that women obviously make the decision to give life, but we've got no rights.
Rule number 1. When it comes to family court, women have all the rights. Rule number 2. Remember rule number 1.
I think family court is biased against men. In my experience of handling these cases all over New York State for plus 20 years, what I've seen is they don't usually get a break with child support. When it comes to custody and visitation, if they want to prove they're the best dad in the world, they need to really prove it. And with spousal support, a lot of times, if the wife is the moneyed spouse making a boatload more money, the judges will tell you, I don't care, I'm not giving him spousal support. Yet if the roles were reversed, it would be exactly the opposite. Just not fair. There's nothing in the law to say that anything is gender specific. It should be an equal playing field. It's getting better. It's better than it used to be 20 years ago, but it's still biased.
In a family court, women don't want an even playing field. They want the table tilted toward them.
I think there are a lot of reasons why child support is unfair. I think there's a lot of things that could be done to make it more equitable. Number one is if we fix the way custody was done. The states that have the presumption of 50-50 have it right. So child support gets really unfair when in many instances you have a mom withholding the child from dad, and then he pays child support on having 0% custody.
The reality is that most of the earning is done by men, and most of the spending is done by women. It's in the best interest of our capitalist economy to siphon money from men and give it to women.
Common question that I get as a family law practitioner for the last 10 years is, what are my rights as a father? And the answer is none. At this point, if you have not been married and you have a child out of wedlock, you don't have rights as a father until you go to court and ask for them. You have to file a petition for paternity to get your rights established under the law. You may say, Megan, I signed the birth certificate. I pay child support. I pick my child up all the time. But that can all be washed away legally if you don't have an actual order that establishes those rights, that establishes that that's your child legally, that establishes that this is your time sharing and your right to spend time with your child. If you have not established paternity for your child, please, prevention before cure. Get your order in place before you have a situation where you're running to the courthouse to figure out what your rights are.
I think it sucks that unmarried women are automatically given rights to their children, while unmarried men have to fight for them.
Why don't men get alimony? The purpose of alimony is to level the playing field between the income of the husband and the income of the wife. But sometimes the reality is in 2023, the wife makes more than the husband. So in theory, he should be entitled to alimony. But in my 20 years of experience, that does not happen frequently. The courts are biased against men receiving alimony. It's just the truth.
You almost have a better chance of walking into a forest and finding both a unicorn and a dragon than meeting a man who is receiving alimony.
This is how I know that men do not get a fair shake in family court. They're 10 times more likely to commit suicide than women during divorce. That means that for every 10 men that commit suicide during divorce, only one woman commits suicide. That stat right there tells me that men cannot get a fair shake in family court. That stat right there tells me that women know that they can ruin their husband's life like that. They can take his kids. They can take all of his finances, take his freedom without an issue. That's why 70% of the divorces initiated in the U.S. are initiated by women, because they know the laws. They know that at a drop of the hat, they can say whatever they want, and they can take every single thing from their husband. So men have no other recourse but to unalive themselves. It's very sad that you can find those stats online and nobody talks about it, and nothing's being done to change it.
After my parents' divorce, my father contemplated self-deletion. Luckily for me, he never followed through with it.
What level has your paranoia hit after family court? My paranoia got so bad that if I bought beer and brought it to my house, I was smuggling it into my house. Don't have a drinking problem, but I know they'll use it against me. Every time I leave my house, I check to see if anyone's following me. Whenever I walk into a grocery store, I check to see if anyone's looking and following me. When I have my daughter, I question every little thing that I do. That way I don't get in trouble for doing something I didn't do, but they're going to say that I did. Life after family court can get so stressful and so rough, and you go absolutely insane. And the only reason why you go insane is because there was never justice in the first place. You never did anything wrong, but they used things that you didn't do against you in court, and they were able to throw a restraining order on you, or they were able to throw you in court, and you still have to pay for your court fees and your attorney. If I start dating a girl and she likes me and she's wanting to, get dirty, do I want to do it? Fuck yeah. Yeah, I want to do it. Then my brain starts working. You're like, nah, Ryan, you did this shit before. You don't want to do this shit again. So then all the good guys are left looking psychotic and crazy. And here we are, single, hanging out, avoiding women, avoiding doing anything that's going to get us in any type of trouble whatsoever, because that's what family court did to us.
I feel your pain, brother. This is no way for any father to live. If you think this is bad, check out this next clip.
Imagine being told to pay child support for a kid that is not yours or go to jail. That was the order the state handed down to a Detroit man.
So today, he turned himself in, but here's what happened when 7 Action News reporter Kim Russell went with him to court.
Carnell Alexander walked into the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice knowing in moments he could lose his freedom.
I stayed up all night, couldn't sleep, thinking about it.
Carnell is a wanted man because he refuses to do what the state orders and to pay child support for a child that DNA tests prove isn't his. A child he doesn't even know.
I haven't even had a chance to really speak to him except for one time when we took the DNA test.
Nonetheless, right now, under the law, he's a deadbeat dad. Today, he turned himself in to the judge as ordered.
Scared because I've been before this judge before.
But this time he had attorney Cherika Harris, who volunteered to help after seeing his story on 7 Action News. The judge said he will not go to jail for today.
Thank you. Thank Ms. Harris.
So, the mother of the child committed paternity fraud and welfare fraud, but he is the one being held accountable. What a bunch of bullshit.
Don't people know about how family court and divorces and separations and stuff works for men?
We don't know because we're not allowed to know. Like, family court's a secret. You're not allowed press, you're not allowed public. There's very little oversight. Every time I speak to a dad who's fighting for his child, that is the most heartbreaking story I'll hear. I'll just ask any parent, like, what's the one thing you don't want to lose? And I'd say, like, 9 times out of 10, I'll say my child. And when you consider how many men are losing their child in a system that is corrupt, I feel like that's a bigger issue than we pretend it is.
These two men are from the UK. Over there, it's even worse than it is in the US. For those of you who might wind up in family court one day, let's hope that you don't get your case decided by an old school female judge like this one, or you will be royally screwed. Remember, guys, the game is rigged. The table is tilted. For now, that is. But there is a tiny ray of hope among all of this corruption.
I heard you talking about, let me say this. I think people are by and large familiar with the family court system not being a favorable environment for men.
Yeah.
But what you said today was the makeup of the courts are changing because there is a generation of people who were the product of family court decisions who now are becoming more sympathetic.
That's right.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. So a lot of our younger judges, they don't see a problem with shared custody. In fact, they're deferring to shared custody. So you have younger judges, some who've said, look, I grew up without my dad. And looking back, there was no reason for that. Why am I at a babysitter when my mom is paying someone, my dad's child support, for me to be at a babysitter when I could have been at my dad's house? So these are all common sense things that you think like anybody with a brain, right, with two neurons that hit together would know that this isn't making sense. But our new judges are coming in, they're saying, you know what, we're not doing this.
Well, that concludes this video. Take care and stay strong, gentlemen.